So we're smoking cheese today. Struggle with starting videos. You're gonna put all this in the video, aren't you? So welcome back to the Connoisseur. Today we're going to do some smoked cheese. This is one of my favorite sides to cook this time of year. Temperatures are a little cooler, so it allows us to do some cold smoking. So we've got some sharp cheddar, some extremely sharp cheddar. We've got some charcoal briquettes and some hickory chunks. So we're gonna set everything up to do a cold smoke in the fat stack smoker. Okay. So I have the sharp cheddar from Tillamook. This is more similar to what you're used to when you buy cheddar from the store. A little bit softer. And then I've got the extremely sharp cheddar, Black Diamond brand. This has, you can see it's a harder cheese, a little more crumbly texture, almost like a Parmesan. But it's got a pretty good bite to it. So combined with the smoke, this one's going to taste pretty strong when it's done, which I like in a smoked cheese. If you don't like something that strong, just the sharp cheddar is going to go pretty well. So let's get these on the smoker and get the smoke rolling. So I'm just using a handful of the Kingsford briquettes. Got them in the chimney to get them going. I don't want a ton of heat out of these. I just want enough to get that hickory to smolder, enough to get a good smoke. Trying to keep the temperature down, smoke content up. So that's what we're doing here. There we go. It's nice having dry briquettes. They actually light fairly quickly. You gotta hand select the right hickory chunks. Yep, that's a good one. Like a jet engine. So we'll let that smolder for a minute here. I'll close the lid and we'll watch once we start seeing a pretty thick smoke coming out. It'll be good. I'm gonna be very conscious of the temperatures, make sure we're not getting too warm. We might end up putting the cheese all the way down on the other end just to keep it as far away from the heat as possible. It's probably about 40 degrees out today, maybe a little bit warmer. It's not quite as cold as I'd like to make sure that we don't melt the cheese or have it sweat too much. But I think we're still in a safe temperature. So we'll be very cautious of how much heat this is putting out compared to just how hot it is out or how warm it is out today. So, but yeah, let's let this smolder for a minute. I'll get the cheese arranged on a rack and then we'll get that set up, and then it's just a waiting game at that point. So we've got a pretty good smolder going right now. This is putting off a little more heat than I'd like, so I'm going to pull some of the briquettes out. But as you saw, the wood is starting to smolder down pretty good. I don't want to open flame because that's when things just get out of control and you start putting a ton of heat into your cooker. And we're not here to make cheese sauce. We're here to make solid smoked cheese. So do not want it to melt or sweat. So I'm going to go ahead and pull some of the briquettes out just to bring the temperature back down, probably add some more wood to keep a good level of smoke going. But this is what we're looking for. We want a smoke that's nice and thick. You don't want a lot of visibility through it. So not really trying to run a clean smoke like we would if we were smoking a brisket for 12, 14, 16 hours. We're just putting a couple hours of hickory smoke on some cheese. So I'm going to go ahead and get some some briquettes pulled off. Got brisket on the mind. I'll just set these aside because as the ones in here burn down, I might add these back in. So that's the other trick, is always keeping a few partially lit briquettes ready to go, because then again, if this starts to get too cold, then I can add some of that back in. I'll see that. That's not what we want. So like I said at the beginning, this is a cold smoke that we're going for. So I'm not actually cooking the meat like you would if you're doing pork or beef, or even smoked salmon. It's technically still a cold smoke, but you are cooking the salmon a little bit, so you're getting up 120, 130 degrees. In this case, we just want smoke to add flavor to the cheese. We want it warm enough where the cheese is soft enough to absorb some flavor, but not so warm that it melts. But we just want some of the smoke to stick to the cheese, add some flavor to it without any heat actually changing the composition of the cheese. We're not cooking anything here. We're just getting smoke to add flavor, as if you were putting salt and pepper on something to season it. So if you've ever left cheese out on a plate in the summertime, you know, once it gets really above like 70, 80 degrees, the cheese will start to sweat quite a bit, which ends up drying out the surface, and you get kind of that nasty hard crust on it with the oily sweat sitting on it. So we're trying to keep everything ideally below like 50 degrees inside the smoke chamber. I don't really have a good way to measure that. My temperature gauges don't start till 100. So I'm really just going by feel and visually just watching the cheese. If it starts to sweat, we can do things like open this door to let some heat out, pull some charcoal out to bring the temperature down, move the cheese farther away, just open everything up and kind of take a break, let things cool down. There's some options there, but really, rather than using temperature gauges, we're going by feel, and we're doing a lot of visual inspection of the cheese as it cooks to look for signs of it starting to sweat, so we can control the temperature that way. So just to make it easier to get the cheese on and off, I'm using this grate here. Also, the grates that are in the smoker, pretty greasy from the last few cooks I've done, and that doesn't ruin the cheese, but you get just the kind of that black grease on it, which isn't attractive to look at. So this keeps it cleaner, easier to manage, especially if we're doing a lot of cheese. This makes it easier to move stuff around, pull it out to test it, things like that. So got it on the grate here. We're going to go ahead and put it on. And I was thinking of going up top, but it's quite a bit warmer up there, and we're still getting some smoke down below, so I'm going to go ahead and put it down here. Yeah, you can feel there's some heat starting to rise up to the top there, so we'll put it there. We'll just manage our little fire bowl that we've got going over there. Yeah, this will be on here for a couple hours. We'll check it periodically, just again watching for any signs that it's starting to sweat or melt. But really, it's just kind of seasoned to taste at this point. The longer you put it on there, the smokier it's going to get. Once you start actually seeing some of the, you'll see the color change a little bit. At that point, you know it's getting close to being time to pull it off before you actually over smoke it. So, yeah, there we have it. We'll see how it does. So the cheese has been on close to about 3 hours now. Did a quick taste test on it. It's actually came out pretty good. You can see it's got a little bit of color. You can see around the edges it's darker. That's about what I'm looking for. Any darker than that, and it's probably going to be too smoky. But yeah, we'll slice into it, do a little taste test, and see how it is. Did a little test while it was in the smoker there about an hour ago. It's got a little more smoke on it since then, so we'll test a couple of the pieces here. This is that extra sharp cheddar. Wasn't advertised as a white cheddar, but I think it's a white cheddar. Definitely has all the qualities of white cheddar. So what's interesting, and this might be because we used hickory, is the smoke actually sweetened that cheese up. It had quite a bit of a bite to it at first. Now it has almost a creamy sweetness with a little bit of spicy from the smoke. So actually really good. Let's try the sharp cheddar here. And you can see that was what it was before, and you can see it got a little darker on the outside. So that's good. That's what we're looking for. And you're not going to get a smoke ring like you would meat. It doesn't penetrate into the cheese that far. What I'll actually do is I'll put this in the fridge, just in a Ziploc bag, for about a week. That'll give it time for the flavors to mellow out a little bit, and then it'll absorb a little bit farther into the cheese at that point. So we'll have a little more balanced flavor after about a week. But for the initial taste test, it's actually pretty good. I think any more than that, it would probably be too smoky. I think that's perfect. Temperature-wise, I think we managed that really well. None of the cheese sweat at all. I'm not getting any kind of brine or bark on the outside of it. Yeah, even as is, it's very edible, very pleasant. So a week from now, it's going to be even better. Got a couple of slices there. Well, I'm super excited with how this turned out. It's really good. I can't wait to try it here in a week after it's been resting. But there you go. That's how I smoke cheese. You can do the exact same thing on a smaller grill. You just want to be very conscious of how close your heat source or your smoke source is to your cheese so you don't overcook it. I've done this in my pit barrel cooker. I've done this in my Weber kettle. I've done this in my small Oklahoma Joe Highland. So whatever you have that can contain smoke will work. You just got to scale down the number of briquettes. Like when I did it in the Weber kettle, I just had a small like tuna can with 2 charcoal briquettes in it that I would just throw a couple of wood chunks on at a time. So whatever you got to work with should be able to do something like this. Just scale it down if your smoker is smaller, and just be very conscious of the temperature. Keep that smoke consistent. We were on for about 3 hours. Turned out really good. So appreciate you guys watching. I'm Kyle. This is the Carnosaur. We'll catch you on the next one.